Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. Thank you for joining me. I'm here at I/O Connect in Berlin. I was invited by Google and I got the studio here and I got a great guest here. You want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Abdel. I'm a developer advocate at Google. I work on containers and Kubernetes.
So I grabbed Abdel after he did an amazing demo about the Code Assistant. And the reason I did it, I didn't tell you why it is, because a week ago, I was working, I like to work with inside Cursor. And I always playing between few models at the same time. So even if I have like the same task to do, I will try it with Gemini 2.5 Pro, and then I will try it with 4, and then I will decide which one I'm going on.
Yeah.
And after my last video, and I hope you saw my last video, after the I/O, I did 4 different ways to do a prototype with different tools that Google released in I/O.
Okay.
So it's the AI Studio Build and the Firebase Studio and go on and go on.
Got it.
So after that, I didn't mention Code Assist at all in that video because I didn't have time to play with it.
Okay.
And then a few weeks ago, I was just like doing my own thing when before I'm writing a code, I'm first doing like a few prompts that I'm just doing all the design of what I'm going to do. So I'm starting like, you're not going to write any code. We're going to do this thing. How do you think that we should do it? Let's do like a conversation and everything.
Got it.
And after I got like the response from the code, I said, wait, but I do have the Code Assist plugin because it's a VS Code and I already had it inside. Let's ask the same question. And I got like a complete different answer. So inside Cursor agent, both of the models gave me the same answer. When I got to Code Assist, I got like, it will start writing the code and I said, oh my God, I didn't thought about this option at all.
Okay.
So it's like completely different. And then when I thought, I said, okay, but I'm using Gemini 2.5 Pro in both places, but the wrapping around it's completely different agent.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I need to start working on design on this area. And then I saw your demo today and said, okay, we have to talk.
Okay, sure.
We definitely have to talk. So let's just have a quick run of what you showed today, because this is all new option that we have available for developers.
Yeah. So what I showed today was, I did multiple demos, but look, the first thing is Gemini Code Assist tools, which is essentially a set of integration with like popular developer tools like GitHub, Google Docs, things like that. So you can, in the IDE, tag a specific tool with an @ and then ask, okay, like go look at my docs and pull a doc that has a specific name and summarize it for me. And you don't have to leave your IDE, so you can just sit within the IDE. Or tag like GitHub or GitLab and say, okay, give me my pull requests and my issues, blah, blah, all that stuff. And there is also an integration that we released with Sneak, which is like code scanning, right? Okay. All of that's within the IDE. So you just have your plugin, you install it, and then you do all of that stuff. So that was one thing. The second one was basically the SDLC, or we call it like Code Assist agent. So the Code Assist agent is an agent-based developer that you can just like tag and ask it, do stuff for my code. And because it has local awareness of the entire code base, it can actually make changes across multiple files. So the demo I showed is migrating an app from Java 8 to Java 21. And it has this like Kanban-based board, which allows you to actually interact with it. So it tells you.
Which was amazing.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite tools. Because I tried all of these code assistance tools, and I did not like. So in the previous experience, it used to be that like the chat panel inside your IDE.
Yeah.
That's where it shows you the changes, and it gives you like a single button to accept all of them, which it's not great experience, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, as a developer, I just even hide the entire like file explorer. I just want to like have the full IDE and the full code open in front of me, right?
Definitely.
And so because this like Kanban dashboard shows up in the middle of the IDE, and then it actually gives you the step-by-step what it's doing and how it's reasoning, and then it's interactive. So if it needs more input, it will ask you to like, hey, are you okay? Is this planned? Blah, blah, all that stuff, right? And then the last one, which is my favorite. Actually, after the talk, somebody came to me and he said, I would have wished if you did an entire session on just the last part, which is the Cloud Assist or the Application Design Center. So Cloud Assist is the chatbot based into the console. And the Application Design Center is it's a design tool that allows you to go from like a Canva-based design into an app or into an infrastructure.
Definitely a full session as itself.
Yes.
Because I don't think they're connected. But for the canvas, I think what I really like is when I'm working, what I learn is that if you're giving a long task, no matter what model, including Gemini with 1 million token, a long task sometimes it's getting lost.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is I'm doing this discussion in the beginning, and then I ask it to create like a requirement, and then I tell him that, okay, now let's do a plan step by step with the check marks.
Okay, I see.
And now when I'm going back and I'm asking Gemini, okay, now we're doing only phase 1.
Okay.
When you finish, do the check marks, write all the testing for phase 1, and then we're moving on.
Okay, so you make it like...
So I'm breaking it,
iterative.
and it's the same thing that I saw on your demo, that this is the canvas board. You're just doing the same, but more beautiful.
Yeah.
It's not just a document.
We made it slightly more beautiful, for sure, yeah.
For sure. I will have to do it myself, too. But yeah, so those are amazing new way to code.
Yes.
Basically. And I don't like to use vibe coding, because for me, I don't think we are still have the technology from prompt to production.
For sure, yeah, I can. Yeah.
The technology is not ready. It might be in the future, but
Yeah.
not for now. So now we need to work on it.
Yeah.
And I think this is also why I like what you showed today, because you can still see the working process, and you still can be like the man in the middle that come and said, wait, you went sideways.
Yeah.
That's not
Or
what
you
I
went
mean.
Too far or whatever. Yeah.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
Let's change it. Let's change that name or whatever.
Yeah.
But yet again, when I'm trying it, and I'm sure that I'm hearing it from other developers as well, sometimes it feels like, no, that's complete. It's not ready.
Yeah.
And then what do you do then?
Yeah, so I sometimes have that feeling, and I find it that most of the time, either your prompts are not good enough, or what you say is you're giving it like too much to do.
Okay.
I think that the way you should think about these tools is that they are a very junior good developer. Like, they are a good developer, but they don't have experience. So if you give it too much tasks, it will be lost in context. So you should be like super specific about what you're trying to do. But the other thing also we should keep in mind is that, and this probably to answer the question of like, is this thing going to replace us as developers? I don't think it will, simply because I think like, as a developer, part of your job is to write code. But a big part of your job is decode business needs into code.
Yeah.
And I think that part cannot be done by an AI for today, right?
Right.
Because this means that you have to fine-tune AI on every single business use case, on every single process that a business has, and then somehow make it translate that into code, which probably would be too much a waste of time and resources, right? So I think that I don't like the concept of vibe coding, but I think it's sometimes useful for prototyping, just to get like from an idea to like something that is running. Because as human beings, we're also sometimes very keen on like visual cues. So you like going from an idea in your head to something that you can see actually working is much better than just like keep thinking about it in general, right? So I think that's where at the beginning, this thing is going to evolve over time. They're going to like improve over time. I personally, the demo I did, which is quite different than, it's not vibe coding in the sense that there is already an existing code base.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to improve it, right? Sure. And I find it's actually better at doing that, generally speaking, because I think that like, you know, the very simple example of migrating from one version to another version of a programming language, that shouldn't be that difficult actually to execute with an AI, right? Because all you're doing is just say like, okay, this is all the spec of this version, this is all the spec of this version, and this is how the specs translate, right? And you just like should be able to just move to the new version.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think also, to start with, I like AI Studio Build, which is very strong just to build the first thing.
Yes.
And then take it to your environment and start working with whatever you're working it.
Yeah.
That really helps, because now you have a baseline of the code, and you already have what you think about it inside it, and now you can start. So it's not exactly, it is kind of a vibe coding, but you're moving between tools and you're choosing the right tool for the right task.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think the main problem that I'm facing is people expectation, or especially developer expectation. So in the media and in the social media, they're all like, yeah, you can vibe code and you can do it. But I don't think we're there yet. And we should have like more patience and try a little bit the tools before we decided that, oh, no, that's not working. Maybe it's not working for this task, and maybe it's working for this task better. By the way, if you're talking about another tip for the viewer, I found that Gemini 2.5 Pro is amazing, first of all, on doing like the architecture and writing the code. But when it comes to testing, I'm switching to Claude. Because Claude 4 is better in unit testing.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
And it was so surprising to see. And now I said, okay, so I have like 2 different agents, and each one of them is like, and if I have something that I see that something, even Claude, you're writing like a long test and you see that something going wrong, so I will ask Gemini to criticize the code, not fixing it, just criticize the code, and I'm taking this output back to Claude and says, look, this is what I think. He doesn't know that Gemini thinks
Yeah,
that.
of course.
And this is what I think.
You're beating
Now
AIs
fix
against
it.
each other. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. How is your coding changed in the last year? As yourself,
I'm
not
definitely,
as...
I'm definitely using more AI. It's like so. First of all, I think I'm probably not the only one to say this. I don't like writing documentation. I find that's like the most boring part of coding in general, right? So I love that Gemini Code Assist or Gemini itself can write at least some basic documentation. You still have to read it and kind of proof it to make sure it's good, but at least like the very basic task of going from an empty doc to something is pretty good, right? So that's like the first thing. So I use that quite heavily, like generating docs, right? That's something I do. And just to be clear for the audience, because I know that a lot of, so I'm not a Java developer, but I hang out with the Java community quite a lot. And I know that when we talk about this, a lot of old school Java people say, oh, well, we have JavaDoc, right? It's like a command line tool that pulls comments from the code and creates a documentation. That's not what it does. It's not pulling comments. It's actually reading the code and generating documentation. It's a completely different thing, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is, since like as a developer advocate, a big part of my job sometimes is just try out things. And a lot of times it's trying out code I didn't write myself. So I actually use Gemini Code Assist to explain code. I didn't show it at the demo, but you can do that. You can like highlight code and say like, explain what this thing does, right? So that's another aspect of how I use AI in my day-to-day job. And the third one, which is like, it's interesting that you mentioned that whole thing of like using AI Studio to prototype and then moving toward like a quote-unquote real IDE for the actual coding, right? There was a question actually earlier in my session about that. Somebody asked, like, what's the difference between the two? And I was like, oh, this is for prototyping, this is for whatever. And it made me think, this is something I wish we had when I started as a developer, because a lot of times when you are a developer, you are writing code, but you are interacting with like third-party APIs.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was the case for me, but when I started, that part sucked because you had to basically go read the documentation of a third-party API written by another developer, and they're just hoping it's good enough for you to know.
And they always forget some stuff.
And they always forget some stuff.
And you have to guess it on the API.
So I wish that every single API portal just had a prompt where you can just like ask in natural language, this is what I'm trying to achieve, generate the code for me. And it will give you code that is, let's say, 90% there. But that's already better than like you digging through the documentation to try to figure out like, oh, for these endpoints, these are the inputs, and this is the expected outputs. And the inputs have to be formatted this way. I wish if we were at the time, and I think we're getting there, when you, the person who released the API, just fine-tune a model on your own API, on your own documentation, on your own code, and then just make that available as a prompt. So when I ask the AI, it gives me a code that follows your best practices because you wrote the API, so you know how it works, right?
In a way, MCP is a little bit like that. In a way, because you have the card inside that describe what it needs to do, but you dealing with an LLM and not with like structured code that give you fundamental answer. This is like the main changes. But I think MCP took a lot from API, but they also managed to say, but you don't need to read the entire documentation. The input know what you need to get, and he will deal with everything inside. So like it's like a level up of that. But
I wish that was, for example, built into Swagger, like the very popular, API portal, if you want, for like OpenAPI specs that you end up actually dealing with as a developer most of the time. I wish that was, and not only for, and I'm talking only for like third-party APIs, as in APIs provided by external users. It could be actually APIs provided by your internal developers. Because when you work in a big org, you are most of the time integrating your systems through API calls, right? So if you build this API, you just like slap an LLM on top of it, which knows exactly how you built your code. I don't need to know how your code works. I just need to know exactly how to call it, how to invoke it, right? And then, I can go from a prompt to some sort of base code. And then from there, I can just like improve on it, right?
Definitely. So let's go back to the documentation because you also had like a short demo that you said you show how the code assistant built the documentation.
Yes.
And I saw that there's a link there for the actual function.
Yes.
Was that right?
Yes.
Did you ever write documentation with links to
the... Never. Because who does that, right?
Who have time to that?
Who have time for that?
That's crazy. So I must play with it. How does it work?
So it's still in private preview, so you have to wait a bit to like for it to be available. But it essentially just looks at your code, generates generates MD file, like markup files.
Yeah.
And then in the markup file, it has a link to the function.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward because it's able to scan your entire code. So I don't myself know I don't know the underlying actually kind of how it works, the guts of it, like the innards of it, how it works.
Right.
But my experience have always been it's just very simple markup that generates markups with like links, like anchor links essentially to the functions.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But then you have to remember to every time ask the agent to update the documentation.
Of course, if you change it,
otherwise
obviously.
the link will be broken completely. And,
Yeah. I think the other thing, which I haven't tested yet, and I hope we will include it, I don't know if we are planning to do it, is I want to, one of the more useful things would be that the AI, when it generates documentation, it generates a graph of calls.
Okay.
So it generates an exact like graph telling you like, you know, when an input comes in, it goes here, and then it goes to this function, back to this function.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, because most of the time as a developer, you end up dealing with multiple files, and then you have to like click around.
Guess how the logic works.
Exactly.
Oh,
and if you're debugging existing code that you don't know, well, your best tool is just console.out the input as it travels through the code to try to figure out like what's happening, right?
Definitely.
So if it can generate like a graph to tell you, okay, you know, this is your endpoint, and these are all the functions that this thing goes through. And because let's face it again, as developers, one of the things we like to do a lot is we create a utils file that has all the utilities, and then we just name them random names, right? Like a name that makes sense to you, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to other people.
I'm not naming anything anymore. I'm worse at naming. Okay. I'm like the worst developer to give names to stuff. Okay. And once Gemini is doing it for me, I'm so relaxed because I really don't know how to. I always like, every time I have a code review with someone else, the first thing they're saying like, you're naming. Oh, come on. Come on, change it to this, change it. And now everything is like perfect.
Yes.
Everyone understands my naming.
You don't have to feel bad. I'm also as bad as you in that,
For sure. Important question. You asking Code Assist to write code. Do you read every line or not?
That's a very good question. No. Not always. Not always that. No.
Okay, because I think for me, it's like, it shows you how much you trust the model.
Yes.
How much you trust the tool. Because for me, I'm still reading every line.
Yes.
And I'm still finding stuff that need to be fixed.
Yes. Okay.
Especially if it's going to a customer of mine and stuff like that. I'm still the one who's signing on the code.
Yeah. So you need to make sure it's good.
So I need to read every line, and this is for me like a code review that I'm doing. So I just need to do the code review. I don't need to write the code. But I think in the last few weeks, I stopped reading the unit test.
Okay, because you just trust it works?
Because it works.
Okay.
So I just need to read the titles so I understand, okay, they did the right logic, but as long as I'm getting the right results and everything is green, I'm fine not to read it because I found out that it's a lot of lines. I will never read it because I'm asking for more tasks that as a developer I wouldn't do because I'm a lazy. And you know, sometimes you say, okay, it's enough for me to test only this area. I have a project who's run with 98% coverage of unit tests. I never had that before.
I see.
So that's a lot of line, and I'm saying, okay, I need to have a personal life too. So I cannot read that, but I'm still reading every line
of the code
because I think I still find stuff that didn't give me the confidence to say, yeah, I'm trusting it.
Got it. So for me, so usually what I do is I get the code generated, I would run it, I see if the output is what I'm expecting, but I do also read the line if I'm publishing the code. So the code is going to be made public.
If someone else is going to read it.
Yeah, I don't want people to make fun of me.
It's my name. It's not Gemini.
Exactly.
On GitHub.
If it stays private, then most of the time I don't really read the code. I mean, the thing also is somehow you will have to because it doesn't get it right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So it sometimes kind of bullshits you, right? It gives you like wrong answers, or it generates like random things, or call a function that doesn't exist, or something like that, especially like language-specific functions. So you sometimes you're forced to because you run the code and it doesn't work, and then you have to go back to try to debug it, right?
Yeah. So another thing that I started doing lately is that I'm always curious about the prompts.
Yes.
Because I think now it's the most important thing. And if you practice yourself to be a better prompter, then you will get better results.
Yes.
So part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to document the prompt also.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you keep track of the prompt.
So I can also say, okay, now I understand what was the reason that this code was generated, what was the original, and then I can learn from it over time.
Got it.
Because we all know every new version, prompting need to change.
Yes.
Every model need different prompting.
Yeah.
So that's part of me trying to keep up and see, okay, that's work, that doesn't work. This one for Claude, I'm always saying this thing. For Gemini, I'm saying this thing. I'm sorry I'm not mentioning other models, but I'm not working with other models anymore. I think both of them are just brilliant developers for now. So for me, that's enough.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you that we're not going to lose our job in the next few months.
Hopefully
or something. No, I think there will always be, you still need the creativity of someone who knows how to solve problems.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And it's very easy to put the Lego bricks together, because coding is basically putting some Lego bricks that other people build together and have something work. But eventually someone needs to see the big picture, and it's still going to be us that need to do it. But how our life going to change, from your point of view, in the next few months?
So if you would have asked me a few months ago, I used to say this sentence, which is AI is not going to replace developers. AI is going to replace bad developers.
Okay.
And I think you've been working long enough in the field to know that there is quite a lot of bad developers out there, right? So
yeah,
that's definitely. I think that what AI will do is it will help us not do the boring tasks, the things that no one wants to do, write documentation, write tests, all the stuff that we've been talking about, and kind of focus on more like either business logic, very specific custom logic that you have to do, or kind of more creative way of solving specific solutions, right? I think I would have to assume that what will happen over the next few years is we're going to probably be moving away partially from the coding interviews, which focuses too much on data structures and algorithms.
Okay.
Just because we don't need people to know these things, right? Like you can just do it with an AI, right? And I think that, in my opinion, if I have to speculate, the future would be in the how do you become a good prompter? Because that's what will make the difference between being very effective with AI and wasting time with AI, right?
Yeah.
Or with coding assistance specifically.
I wonder if AI won't eventually know how to prompt it better, and then our challenge to be like, are you the one who knows how to solve problems?
Sure.
How to describe, how to understand a complex problem and describe it simply so someone else can build it.
Using prompts, yeah. Either you write the prompts yourself or describe to somebody who would write the prompts. I think that what you're talking about here is a general rule, I would say, or a general observation, because my experience have always been that within a team or an organization or a company, the more senior you are, the less is about your capability to write code,
right,
and more about your ability to actually translate rules, requirements into something that somebody else can do, right? Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a very simple actually thing that we can quickly cover is, like, within organizations, the more senior you are, and let's say that, like, you're a senior engineer somewhere, and then you're moving to another company to become a principal engineer. You're not going to have coding questions today. And this was true before AI, because it's your ability about actually solving the problem, not writing the code, because somebody else will do the code, right? And I think that this is going to be even more true as we go forward.
Yeah, we're out of time, but that also leads to the problem of how will a junior become a senior if we don't going to need junior anymore? But that's for a different episode.
That's for a different discussion, yes.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel, for having me.
Great conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Till next time.
Until next time.